Hello.
Name, check. Voice, check. Fear, check. 30 seconds to explain who you are to awkward stares asking what you are. Nervous gazes and awkward stares. Whispering voices. Upper and lower pitches adjusting themselves until comfort reaches everyone's faces. None of this is new when your body does not fit into boxes. Doctors and nurses can leave one's palms damp with fear, can leave one hang to people for treating them with humanity. That kindness shouldn't be the default. Present in every moment in history, leftover conversations for not fitting in the one-size-fits-all gender norms. Leftover forms, name, check. Voice, check. Fear, check.
Darkness surrounds them as Anamika texts Papa. A kind sound on the left as she reads the text asking her to come.
Anamika steps out into the daylight. Her gaze flips to her friend. Worry fills her mind like a hummingbird trapped inside the jar. She calls out to friend to interrupt their trains of thoughts and waves forward to them.
As the hospital building grows closer and the path grows shorter, Anamika and her friend walk nearer and pass the security through crowds. But as Anamika looks to her side, she notices thin air. Looking back, she realizes her friend is caught by the white claws of the security guard, and Anamika reaches out to grab her free.
Walking into the yawning opening of the hospital building, people point and stare, whisper and stare at them, and which earns the hot ire of Anamika. They feel a sharp dismay, wishing for the power of invisibility.
Stepping onto an elevator, about to close with her hand, ignoring the silent faces, writhing in disgust as people walk out in disgust.
A long hallway stretches into the distance. Two identical doors face each other. Men streaming out of one and women out of the other. Men, women, feminine, masculine. Indecision fills their mind, but they turn their back at the last minute, hearing their friend's voice.
Walking into the consultation room, they see faces twisting and legs reacting of their own accord. A meeting is arranged, but not before dismayed words were exchanged. Boxes filled, names checked, but not before disrespect is thrown at the first encounter.
White walls and fluorescent lights. Ticking clocks sinking into beating hearts. The pulse of every hospital waiting room, into which they now tread into carefully, only to fall into a trap of dread, to wait and watch and wait, while people walk in and out of honeymoon rooms. Letting other people in without them in consideration. Anamika storms off in wrath to lock horns with the assistant, barely holding back when he asks them to sit in wait.
As the doctor man beckons them to the chairs with irrelevant cases and questioning judgments. Judgments are passed and the swallowed in depths of misery.
Did this tug at a string in your heart? This is a bitter truth about what transgender people in our country go through every single day.
In the year 2010, National Center for Transgender Equality has conducted a survey on nearly 28,000 transgender people. A staggering 48% of the participants have had experiences with doctors who had zero knowledge on transgender healthcare.
28% of the study participants were subjected to discrimination in medical settings.
19% of the participants have reported being refused care because of their gender identity.
5% were victims of violence in doctors' offices.
We conducted a knowledge, attitude and practice study on a population size of 300 undergraduate medical students. What we assessed that the existing knowledge, attitude and awareness of the study sample and on the impact of a seminar on them.
A seminar was conducted to understand the medical and social aspects of being a transgender person. This seminar proved and an online questionnaire was given out using a 6-point Likert scale and responses were assessed post and pre-seminar.
Why we chose to do this topic was to shed some light on the discrimination faced by transgender people on a day-to-day basis. They defy social norms and hence are bullied at educational institutions, disowned by their families, pushed into streets and are denied work opportunities. This creates a vicious cycle of poverty and discrimination, which leads to them to have a very poor standard of living.
The topics that we covered in our seminar were
Gender expression is what one expresses to the world about their perceived gender through clothing, expression and behavior. It can be feminine, masculine or other.
Gender identity is about how one perceives oneself. It can be a male, female, non-binary or some way in between. Sexual orientation is who you are attracted to sexually, physically and mentally.
Sex is what is assigned at birth by a doctor based on the external genitalia that the baby is born with.
queer history, just like any other genre of history, has its own ebbs and flows. Stonewall Uprising is the most pivotal moment which shaped the gay rights movement forward. The two women who propelled this uprising were Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, who were two trans women of different ethnicities. The Marsha P. No Pride for some of us without the liberation of all of us was an iconic book by Marsha.
After
That the gender affirmation can be done by hormone replacement therapy and sex reassignment surgeries, which are done by specialists in selected institutions.
After compilation of data from a survey, the following results were obtained. Response rate of the study sample was 99%. Before the seminar, 45.7% of the population were unfamiliar with the term LGBTQIA+, and after the seminar, it reduced to 5.6%.
47.9% were unaware of the differences between sex, gender identity and sexual orientation. That reduced to 1.7% after our seminar.
77.7% were willing to give gender-affirming treatments before the seminar, and after the seminar, it rose to 89.3%.
56.1% did not know the existence of Pride Month or the Trans Visibility Day. It increased to 87.3%.
82% people were unwilling to receive treatment from transgender population, but later it has reduced to 39 people.
56 students were not comfortable visualizing transgender people as their patients. This dropped to 31 people after our seminar.
The prominent LGBTQ activist Barbara Gittings once said, and I quote, "Equality is not just about passing laws. The struggle is real when it comes through the mind and hearts of the community."
Our stats have clearly shown that a change in mindset can be brought about through a small seminar explaining them about the things that they are not aware of. Now just imagine what a huge difference can be brought about by including transgender healthcare in the medical curriculum
before. My only question is, your exclusion criteria included doctors and nurses and list of people. Then why, I mean, if one among us in the college or in our class is a transgender, would you include them? Why did you why did you put everyone on the medical fraternity exclusion criteria?
Thank you for the question, ma'am. The reason we included practicing professionals in the inclusion criteria is because we wanted to assess the existing levels of knowledge amongst undergraduate students because they are the future doctors. And our entire, one of our main motives of doing this project is to prove that there is a need to include transgender physiology, basic transgender physiology, and their details in our undergraduate medical curriculum. So we wanted to assess their existing attitudes towards transgender people. That's why we only included medical undergraduate students rather than other professionals.
Objectives, we have mentioned to mitigate the bias. So I want to know, number one, how did you go about doing that, and what was the impact of that? Did you assess the result? Number two, I want to understand how did you encourage the provision? Judging the volume. Did you approach the principal? What did you do? What were the provisions that you suggested and what they need to impact your study?
To mitigate the bias was our indirect aim. We thought that medical students are basically the undergraduates who are the future population. So if we are going to affect them in a positive way, make them aware of how transgender people, what are their needs, and make them sensitive to this population, we are positive that in the future there will be a change and we can actually mitigate the bias and treat everybody in the same way. And about the treatments, we did not suggest anything positive before. It's not something we have invented or something, but we just researched on what these people go through and what treatments they take.
To add to her point, we just wanted to start off a domino effect by at least making people aware of their existence and their struggles, so that maybe sometime in the future, one of these people might take up this as their cause.
So you sensitize the class.
Yes, sir, yes.
But you could not propose any provisions to improve or change the healthcare for transgender. Did you suggest any provisions? Because you mentioned here in your objective to ensure provision of healthcare that does not propagate gender bias. So what did you do to mitigate that problem?
So I would like to clarify on the answer. To mitigate bias, I think one of the most important things we think medical professionals need is knowledge. So the seminar we conducted was aimed at that. We wanted to provide a basic understanding of the basics of gender identity, sexual orientation, and sex, and then we wanted to give them an introduction about what transgender physiology can entail. And so in our seminar, we also talked about the interactions. For example, one scenario that we talked about was the interactions between ART and antiretroviral therapy and hormone replacement therapy drugs. So we just wanted to raise questions amongst medical students about how there is a subset of population that differs in their physiology from what we're taught in. So we think at least if we provoke questions, they'll at least not have preconceived notions about transgender people. So that is the core idea of what we work on.
So, from whatever Dr. was trying to say, the ensure provisions is like they should not be discriminated, they should not be stopped at the gate when they are entering, they should not be made to wait in the long queues. Everybody should be given equal opportunity, they should be seen as equals to others. Okay, these are the provisions, okay, which you should, from whatever you have said. So, my question here is, okay, what are the scales you used to actually show us the difference between the before seminar and after seminar? What were the scales you actually used?
So we use the 6-point Likert scale for assessing
basically self-prepared questionnaires. You didn't use any standardized questionnaires sort of thing. Are there any standardized questionnaires who know their aptitude, knowledge about LGBTQI?
So there is a questionnaire that in our literature review process, we found a questionnaire that was used by the EU government that they as part of their LGBTQI survey. So we used that as a reference, but we didn't. That is one of the only standardized surveys that we could find in our literature review process, because we also saw that there's a lack of transgender research in medicine. It's a newly emerging field, transgender medicine, and research into transgender physiology is a newly emerging field, so we didn't find standardized questionnaires except for the new LGBTQIA research.
You had a standardized questionnaire, why didn't you use it? Okay. Is there any particular reason why you chose a self-made questionnaire rather than a standardized questionnaire?
So sir, basically whatever we wanted to assess, those criteria were not included in the questionnaires we found. Especially U1, it was more of a broad questionnaire involving the entire queer community. It was not focused for transgender community. So we had to make it up as we go. Yeah.
So you chose the transgender part of the questionnaire where it was relevant?
Yes.
And made a questionnaire out of that.
Yes.
Is what you're trying to say.
Yes.
And how long did actually, what is the seminar, what is the structure of the seminar, and how long did it go? What was the duration of the seminar which you conducted? It was an one-to-one or it was an online seminar? What was, I just wanted to understand that.
We went to the classrooms and we conducted the seminar. It was for 1 hour. It was a 1 hour questionnaire seminar. We circulated the questionnaire before the seminar and after the seminar, and we recorded the responses. We have covered the basics of differences between sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, and we have also talked about modern queer history. We have talked about medical basis of transgenderism, and also the treatment modalities and
So it was a one-time seminar or multiple times you went to different classrooms to do it?
multiple times, sir. We have gone to 4 classes.
4 classes. That's all. Thank you.
So wonderful topic. So my 3 questions to you. First is, this is the study you did in our country. What about similar data from the West? Is the situation there any better? That's question number 1. The second one is, what happens every time, every year in OSMICON, you come up with a very relevant burning topic. And post-symposium, that's the end of it. So this you have demonstrated very clearly that awareness is lacking. So what is your long-term goal to the next OSMICON? And then it should not be a flash in the pan and nothing more is talked about it. The entire purpose of these symposia is to make a difference. So what is your plan after this study? That's the second question. And the third one is, when you are starting such a study, it is always good you have specialists within your own wallet. So why don't you meet the faculty once? You have a psychiatrist department here, you have a community medicine department here, and it's always a learning experience to learn from the experts. You people are brilliant, but it's not harmful to meet the experts who have been there and done that and take some inputs before you do this. So these are my 3 points. So just answer the first 2. Difference from the West, and the second one is about what you plan to do.
Thank you for the question, ma'am. So in our literature review, we found that the situation in the other countries is also pretty much similar to what we have seen in India. Based on our research and based on what we saw in the literature review that we done. We went through a lot of papers that were conducted in the US and the Europe, and all the stats pretty much match what we done. And as for the second question now, so we actually contacted the management
few questions I would like to ask you. One is regarding the sample size. You have mentioned that there is minimum of 500, but in the analysis you have done 300 population. Did you calculate something or it was just a convenient sample? Convenient sample. And in the analysis part, you have used a chi-square test. How did you use for a lighter scale like this?
So, answer the chi-square analysis, we use graph and results of graph and results of.
Between which variables did you use that to see what?
So we basically calculated the significance of the difference between the pre-seminar percentage values and the post-seminar percentage values in 8 domains, along with 3 other significant data markers. So out of our questionnaire of 31 questions, we clubbed them into 8 domains, and we calculated the percentage tally in the pre-seminar and the percentage tally in the post-seminar, and the difference was calculated and the significance was checked using chi-square.
So can you do this for percentages?
Sir?
Can you do the chi-square for percentages? Okay, leave that. Another point I would like to add. You in your AV you had focused more on the stigma which is related to the transgender community, right? So did you add any questions in your questionnaire with regard to stigma associated with that? And what is the available healthcare services? Presently, what services are being provided? Did you add anything with regard to that?
Sir, so in regards to stigma, sir, there are 2 of our questions that I can recall at this moment are, one of our questions was, are you comfortable treating a transgender patient? And the second question is, should patients be allowed to reject a doctor or a healthcare provider based on their gender identity status? So, and there were other such questions focusing on the stigma and the bias part and preconceived notions of transgender people. And there was a significant change in the pre-seminar to post-seminar values.
So that's just you have assessed the medical student's attitude, not what is available in the present medical healthcare services. What is the service provided that you are not seeing, right?
No, so we only assess attitudes and knowledge amongst medical students.
Can I add? So there was one section where we mainly focused on the misconceptions, sir. Like we cleared it one after the other. Like which are the common myths that we have about transgender people. Like one was that transgender people cannot be coerced or they can't be forced to become transgender. So this is one example that I can say at this moment. But we we concentrated on the myths and we broke it, we bumped it along with some proper evidence. So I think we did a good job.
To add to that, sir, we also had statements like being a transgender is a mental illness, and we saw how many people agree or disagree with that. And in the seminar session, like my team member said, we had a common myths basket section where we talked about how it's not a mental illness, and the mental illness that they do have is probably because of the discrimination that they face on a day-to-day basis, and that being a transgender person is not a mental illness by itself.
In your sample, study, when you were collecting the questionnaire data, you collect the basic data in terms of their sex.
Yes, sir.
So I just want to ask you in terms of males versus females, were there any transgender participants also?
No, sir. Our entire sample was cisgender, and they were either cisgender male or cisgender female. Our gender identity question had 5 options: cisgender male, cisgender female, transgender female, and non-binary.
So these excluded the ones who answered non-binary and
We did not have anyone answering transgender female, male, or non-binary.
Okay, and apart from that, do you have data in terms of who were more unfamiliar, males or females, and who were more responding to your teaching?
sir, we haven't divided it into, we haven't looked at it on a gender-based divide, we only looked at it from a post-seminar and a pre-seminar divide. But we have the yes, yes.
Last minute. So when you say 46% are familiar, 15% are familiar, how do you count with those percentages? Because it's a lighter score. It's a 6, it's not like a yes or no answer is not there. I agree, I strongly agree, I strongly disagree. How do you come to those percentages?
So in our Likert scale, there were 6 options. So the extremes, the last 2 options were clubbed at